Well, hello and welcome to the Psychedelic Diaries. I am your host, Ray Christian, and do we have a good show for you today? We will start things off as usual with a nugget and a noodle. We have Richard Skaife, founding partner of the Conscious Fund, that will be joining us momentarily for a deep dive and a soul search. And as usual, we'll end the show with a slap and a clap. Producer Kevin is here, and I promised him I would not reference his drug use for likes and subscribes. So please just like and subscribe because you enjoy the psychedelic updates. Oh, come on, dude, that's not the same. All right, moving along. Well, let's get started with the nugget and the noodle. And today's news nugget: full decriminalization of psychedelics in California is now in play. Citizens may get a chance to settle the issue with a referendum vote. The legislation at the Senate level stalled, and so Decriminalize Nature, one of my favorite organizations, says, hold my beer. And if they get the required 600,000 signatures, we will have a vote November 2022. So hallelujah for democracy, and stay tuned on this one. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on lately is psilocybin for phantom limb syndrome. It could be an all-out cure for this issue. For example, amputee patients that have lost a leg or an arm still feel immense pain where that limb used to be. And now large repeated doses of psilocybin has been shown to rewire and optimize your brain. And it's very similar to a neural network training method called dropout, where essentially you remove learning paths and nodes and force the network or the brain to relearn. And this could help the brain of amputees realize that there's no more limb there and to stop sending pain signals. Yet another potential indication for psilocybin. Well, that's it for a nugget and a noodle. Producer Kevin, are we all properly synced up with Richard? Ladies and gentlemen, if I may direct your attention, he is the founding partner of the Conscious Fund, Richard Skaife. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Ray.
Well, Richard, first off, really quick, are you calling in from Malta, the island of Malta?
I am indeed, the sunny, small, beautiful island of Malta.
Oh, wonderful. You are a legend. So let's dive right in, Richard. 2 years ago, you launched a VC fund in psychedelics. And right now, this psychedelic renaissance is really heating up. But 2 years ago, you were really trailblazing. And I'm curious for you, it's a polarizing decision. At that time, what was your thought process as you decided to launch a psychedelic VC fund?
When we look back and we reflect, what the hell were we thinking? No, I mean, we felt, some good tailwinds. We could see some interesting companies who were already out in the market, and some very, very smart people had put money into those companies. We obviously were big believers in the science, and we felt, given what had sort of happened with the cannabis market, even though the regulatory pathways for psychedelics generally are quite different, that there was a liberalized. There was a liberalizing of minds taking place, and I guess also, a willingness for people to fall to data. Now, of course, what we didn't know at this time, was what was going to happen in March, April 2020 in terms of a kind of a global correction in the world, and a realization that psychedelic medicine was going to be needed more than it was ever needed, because I think at that moment, many people were seeing what was happening as possibly just being a couple of weeks of turmoil, and here we are, coming up to what is 18, 19 months later, and for many places in the world, it continues just as it was 18, 19 months ago. In fact, in some cases, even worse. So, yeah, I mean, it was, I guess, with reflection, a well-calculated guess on what the future was going to hopefully look like. And it's been wonderful that in some ways, not always, we've been proven right.
Yeah, and thank you for being one of those tip of the spear guys and doing that. So I love that idea. This is from the Department of Silver Linings. This idea of that COVID may have sped things up here, and adversity can be good for change. So,
in many ways, it's really. I still struggle with trying to find the words to, say, well, trying to make the best of a bad situation or getting the best outcome from something. So it's really difficult to sort of, to take what has been a human disaster with so much loss of life and loss of incomes and restrictions on liberty and say, hey, but the great news is psychedelic medicine did all right out of it. But the reality is, I think a lot of what we've seen in terms of the creation of this industry has actually been a byproduct through the change of this behavior and the fact that people were willing to invest in companies all over the world without necessarily meeting the founders in the same way that they've had to done in the past. So it moved things forward in a much, much faster and more efficient way. And I look at where we really saw the gear change in terms of the volume of new companies entering into the market. Well, that was kind of March, April time of last year, and of course, what we were able to do as an organization through what we do with microdose was to put on these large virtual events and to bring stakeholders from all over the world, be that wonderful speakers or wonderful attendees. And those are just things that I don't think we would have been able to do if we're in, January 2020. This whole idea of jumping on a virtual event was probably,
wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have worked.
And no, just wouldn't have worked. Yeah.
And I like the role you're playing with microdose, very involved with that portfolio company. Speaking of which, I really like your portfolio and the name, the Conscious Fund is just a fantastic name, by the way. I love Gwella, Maya, Wisana. You've really made some savvy investments. How do you approach which companies to invest in?
Well, I mean, we're very, very fortunate because of our prominence in the industry that the vast majority of the companies that we've invested into have, either directly approached us or, we've been connected through one of our extended network. So we haven't had to go out and do huge amounts of deal sourcing in an outbound manner. And I guess in terms of how we ultimately make the selection, well, that is part of your kind of your secret sauce as a VC. But we really look for people that we enjoy spending time with. We look for people who are authentic. We look for people who are really committed to this category. We prefer working with long-term residents and citizens rather than tourists. They're going to stick around for a whole lot longer. And we, whilst we've got a pretty large portfolio, with companies we've yet to announce, probably somewhere in the region of coming up to 23, 24 companies now. We really like to find ways that, portfolio companies can find interesting synergies with other portfolio companies. So yeah, we definitely have some companies in our portfolio who are very much, standalone, do their own thing. Whereas we have, quite a few of our portfolio companies doing really interesting, meaningful things together, which again, I think is really important in terms of driving that spirit of cooperation, whether that's with not-for-profits, with other venture funds, with companies who are outside of our portfolio. We're kind of people who believe in helping as many people as we can, and quite regularly we will roll up our sleeves and we will help companies that where we've got absolutely no financial incentive. We're just big believers in what they're doing, and for whatever reason, could be that we didn't see them early enough. Could be that there could be a little bit of a competitive nature to what they do with one of our other portfolio companies. So probably wouldn't be appropriate for us to have invested, but we're still big fans of what they do. And where we can, we see what we can do to help.
I love that. And speaking of helping people, Richard, last time we talked, you said something that really stuck with me. You said that your true passion is helping people launch their career and get jobs and then seeing them grow. What is it about helping people with their career, Richard, that is so satisfying for you?
Well, I guess that's why I was ultimately drawn to venture capital as well, because you are an enabler of people's next stages in life. They don't always remember that you've done that, which is quite similar to, helping people up the career ladder. For me, it comes back to remembering that, I got my lucky breaks through people who are prepared to take a chance on me, through many different stages of my life. Whether I was that sort of, really pushy sort of 18-year-old entrepreneur, and people were prepared to give me a chance, and I won business and I won contracts through lots of charm and smile, to much further on in my career, where people who are very, very established venture capitalists were kind enough to give me their time and teach me their skill and craft. So for me, it's always been about sort of paying that back, and I guess those are some of my proudest moments. And when I look at people who've had their first job from me, and now they've got really kind of senior roles inside tech, and they keep you up to date with their career progression, and that gives you kind of a warm, gooey feeling as you see them progress. And in the same way, when you write that first check into a group of entrepreneurs, and they keep you up to date with their progress, and you can sort of smile and say, kind of saw it first. I guess it's maybe I was a frustrated talent manager. I wanted to just create artists. I don't know.
I love that reference, and that dovetails to my next question, which was, you got an opportunity to launch the Tiny Weekender concert. Thank you for doing that. Very cool to talk with a guy that built a concert series. And you told me once that as you saw that experience, you saw people that had psychedelic use in a recreational setting that were changing from that, even quote unquote the hooligans. And we've got plenty of clinical trials, Richard, that are going to address these medicinal paradigms. How do we change the connotation around recreational use?
Yeah, it's a really difficult balancing sort of challenge that we have here. I strongly advocate that we should not be judgmental in terms of the setting that people have experienced psychedelics in. And saying, oh, you took psychedelics at a rave. That can't possibly have been a meaningful, life-changing experience. Let's just mark it up as one of those throwaway moments, as if they've just gone to see a cheap B movie at the cinema. Oh, yours was a Burning Man. I guess that scores a little bit higher. Oh, yours was on the couch at a top research university. Well, therefore, you've had the most meaningful experience. And I think some people in the industry have sort of taken maybe the wrong stance in terms of saying, there is no place for recreational psychedelics. And whilst I am not advocating for people to go out and irresponsibly and illegally use these substances, what I'm simply saying is that you have to reflect on the fact that there is a ton of people out there who have had incredibly positive, meaningful, life-changing, life direction changing experiences. And in fact, only today, I discovered a paper which has just been published, and I need to read it in more depth, and I'll be delighted to send it on, and maybe you can sort of link it in the interview, which is taking a sort of a clinical clinical studies model to the benefits that people have had through taking psychedelic substances in what we could best describe as a rave setting, and how those people have created, meaningful connections through that particular setting.
Wait, so
So yeah,
there's
I
a
say
study that shows that people that did it at raves, they're having benefits, even those people.
that's absolutely.
Wow.
So yeah, it was refreshing to read. It seems to be quite a legitimate research piece which has been done. Like I said, I literally only discovered it this morning, and remembered one of the questions we were going to be talking about, and thought, well, let's pop that into the conversation. But yeah, I'm going to do a proper full read of the actual research piece. But I think it's really important that, as an industry, we reflect on, where psychedelics have originated from, their use in indigenous culture, their use in counterculture, their use in rave culture. Some of the brightest creative minds have been sparked through, they believe, their psychedelic experiences. Some of the brightest business minds, attribute their psychedelic experiences to their success in business. And of course, I think, again, it was yesterday, Elon Musk talking at a US tech conference around why he thinks psychedelics are an important part of humanity's recovery. So
Wow.
I think it's really, really important that we don't overly medicalize the entire word psychedelics, while still remembering that, a lot of people are going to get the most benefit from a psychedelic experience in a disciplined medical setting with psychotherapy, and that setting is really important to get right.
Wow. I totally agree. I did not know about that Elon statement. That's worthwhile. We'll put that link in the description of the paper. And for me, it's funny you allude to that, because Richard, I've always thought I'm above average maybe, but I'm not world class. But I discovered psilocybin therapy about 5 years ago, and it changed. Sure, it's made me more mentally stable. It's helped with my mental health, but it's been so much more than that. It's been cognitive ability enhancements. It's been creativity enhancements. And I look at, as I overlap my career with my psilocybin use, there's a clear distinction, an inflection point, and it's made me better as a man, but also as a tech entrepreneur. And I'm curious, how have psychedelics impacted your career?
I think most of my positive experiences with psychedelics has been more of a voyeur than a participant, because the vast majority of time that I spent in sort of the club setting was generally in a work in a work capacity. And when you're wearing the responsibility of thousands of people and you're the license holder, then that's not really the best time to be seeing what this purple ohm or strawberry LSD tab can sort of deliver. So and that doesn't, and that's one thing, that's when you walk into those environments and you feel that energy and you see that connection, and you see people having these wonderful experiences, you in a way become intoxicated. You can go in there completely stone cold sober, completely straight headed, and it doesn't take long before you are really kind of in a really similar sort of place to a lot of people. I mean, I famously used to go to an after hours club in London, but I used to do it having had my Sunday morning breakfast. I used to read the newspapers on my way. I was very fortunate because the record label that I was running at the time was closely linked to this particular club. So, I was guaranteed to be on the guest list. They all knew me. So there used to be these queues of people at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, waiting to get in, who'd been out all night. I used to be able to sort of, walk myself to the front of the queue and go straight in. And, and I could see these people obviously who are in generally a very sort of different place than I was. But I used to have a wonderful time. And I was there for work reasons. I was there to listen to new music, to look at audience response to new music, to see how our music was being played, how it was being reacted to. And I used to have the time of my life. And all I really had most of the time was a couple of Heinekens for breakfast.
One of the experiences I had was, it was during probably one of the most challenging parts of my career and my life, really. And I had a session that was psilocybin and MDMA. And the best way I could try to describe it is that it's like one of those bottles of Coca-Cola, the glass bottles, or the Mexican Coke, as they call it here in LA. Think of the little space in between the top of the Coca-Cola liquid and the top. And that moment where you flip that top, it's fizzy, it's effervescent, it's refreshing. And that little millisecond moment of when the Coke bottle flips, when it opens up and it pops, I was that moment, and I experienced the act and the contents of that for 45 minutes. And I walked away from that thinking that was complete and utter bliss. And if I meet God at the pearly gates and he says, actually, Ray, that was heaven, I'd be like, sounds good. Yeah, let's sign me up. Let's do it. And it really changed the way I see of what's possible in terms of joy and bliss in our lives. And I'm curious for you, what is a psychedelic mystical experience that still resonates with you?
Anybody's first experience to MDMA is going to be an experience which is very difficult to repeat. That comes with its own inherent risks. But that for me was a life-changing experience. I think everything that should have been around that experience was perfect. I was with people that had done it before. I was in a club where I felt very, very safe and I felt very, very relaxed. Much younger than I am now. The music was just the music that I enjoyed. It was a wonderful first experience. And I think it's fair to say that that would be one experience I would love to sort of be able to sort of replay again. But I'm not sure that we'll ever quite get to that exact sort of perfect moment.
Why? Why was it life-changing for you?
It opened. Well, this is a really funny thing. So this was the first time I'd worked in the music industry, and I used to see all the people that I worked with, producers, DJs, going out to these rave parties, and I was like, this is just not for me. And when I say rave parties, most of them were illegal. Most of them were pretty big. And it's like, it's just not really my groove. And I used to get, in a way, teased because I was like the person who was like, no, just not doing it. No matter how many times people said, we'll take you there, we'll look after you. And then for a series of events, that particular weekend happened. And I came back into the office on the Monday, and I think I'd have told the cleaner, if the cleaner wanted to listen about that particular experience. It was just so profound. And of course, I told it with my work colleagues, and they thought it was pretty hilarious because, of course, they'd been telling me for quite some time that I was going to really enjoy it. And I look back at it very, very fondly. It's probably 30 years ago.
Wow. Thank you for that powerful share and the narrative of how you were fighting it at first. I think that can resonate with a lot of people that are probably a little bit skeptical, and which is a good lead into our final deep dive question, Richard. For all the skeptics that are looking at psychedelics with a raised eyebrow, what might a world look like that has safe, legal, and ubiquitous psychedelic use?
Great question. I think we're still quite some way away from that. I think there will be a number of products in the market. Certainly when we're talking about microdose type products, which, always remain sub-threshold, but become more and more effective. So there will become less of the trip involved for certain types of conditions. But undoubtedly, my view is for certain conditions, that is a fundamentally important part of the experience. I think MDMA, social anxiety, low dosing. Do you need to have the empathy that's involved in a large single dose session for social anxiety? Probably not. Do you need it to accurately work with PTSD? Most probably, yes. So I think, we're still quite some way away. More and more people will, I think, become open to it, again, through positive media stories, people who they just wouldn't ever perceive as, taking this particular route of therapy. The most conservative person in the room goes to an ayahuasca retreat, has a very positive experience, feels the need to tell all of their equally conservative friends. People wonder if they've lost their mind. Another person goes away and tries it. Curiosity, got the better of them. So there'll I think, be this sort of general chipping away at it. We're still at the sort of outrageous stage of, the word psychedelics and all of the sort of 1960s, 70s stigma that's attached to the term wrongly. But yeah, it's got some way to go, and I think it's a mixture of changing social opinions and also some of the medicines which actually come into the market not really being, psychedelics, but having benefits that you can get from psychedelic medicine.
I appreciate that. Yeah, perhaps some of these conservative dyed-in-the-wool skeptics having the social proof and going back and telling their friends could really move the needle. Richard, it has been a lovely deep dive together. Now it's time to transition to the speed round soul search. Okay, question number 1, Richard. You are on a desert island by yourself for 10 years. What is your preferred one mind-altering substance?
Wow. 10 years. Well, I guess I'm going to need to have something which cumulatively doesn't sort of build up at psilocybin.
Love that answer. Okay, question number 2. Dead or alive, Richard, what celebrity would you like to have a psychedelic trip with?
Oh my goodness me. Well, I guess you could have a trip with anybody that you want, really, couldn't you? Because your mind just goes to work. But to be in the same room with probably my electronic music idols, the Pet Shop Boys.
Pet Shop Boys. Okay. Question number 3, Richard. A little bit of a philosophical tint on this one. Yes or no? Do we have free will?
No.
Okay. Last final question. Richard, we talked about your love of helping the career of others. Who is the one colleague or mentor that had the most impact on your career?
Would be my VC mentor, Yitz Applebaum. Gave me the confidence and the knowledge to do what I'm doing now.
Wonderful. That's a great share. Richard Skaife, where can viewers find you? Is there any action item that you have for them?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, then I'm at Token Richard. And if you want to read more about our work at the Conscious Fund, then it's theconscious.fund.
I like that Twitter name. We'll give those links in the description. He is the founding partner of the Conscious Fund. Richard Skaife, Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, producer Kevin, well, it's time for our final segment of the show. This is called a slap and a clap. And the slap goes to the leaders in the psychology industry. A new study in the US found that over 50% of psychologists believe that psychedelics have no promise for mental illness. And 17% of the psychologists believe that even with controlled medical supervision, it's still unsafe, which directly conflicts with the medical literature. It's time for the leaders in psychology to look at the research, be bold, and get the word out, because we have a mental health crisis now. A slap to you, psychology leaders. A clap and a round of applause goes to MAPS. Perhaps the OG in this space. They have been here since even the bleak years in psychedelics in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when we had the Nancy Reagan, this is your brain on drugs bullshit. And yet they kept working and pushing for decades, even when they probably felt like pariahs. And now the fruits of the labor are here to harvest. We are in the midst of a psychedelic renaissance. So thank you, and a big clap to MAPS. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of the Psychedelic Diaries. Thank you to Richard Skaife, producer Kevin. I'm Ray Christian. See you next time.